Ed by you, Pizza Roll 94. Top post the 3rd of June 2020 awarded at 3240 SIPBN. 82K women who dated older men as teenagers that now realize they were predators. What's your story? My first boyfriend was 22 years old. I was probably 13 to 14 something. He was very controlling. The kind that tells me I'm not allowed to say no if he asks anything. He used to ignore me for days and not reply to me, and very often made me send him nudes, and I really hated it. But I wasn't allowed to refuse, or he would go find a girl who would satisfy him, a true woman. And I didn't see anything wrong at the time with this, but at least I didn't have sex with him even though he suggested that. Now I'm 21, and when I look back and think about it, I just feel so much shame and burden, and just ask myself why, and wonder didn't he see that I was a freaking child? And I get filled with sadness, and I feel like that happening in such a young age really contributed to things I have done and hate. All I can take from this is to be careful in the future and make sure it won't happen to my own kids. Now I'm 21, and when I look back and think about it, I just feel so much shame and burden, and just ask myself why, and wonder didn't he see that I was a freaking child? And I get filled with sadness, and I feel like that happening in such a young age really contributed to things I have done and hate. All I can take from this is to be careful in the future and make sure it won't happen to my own eight. Of course he could see you were a child. I wish there was something I could say to take those feelings of shame and burden from you. All I can say is you were just a kid, and all the shame and burden should be on his shoulders, not yours. I hope one day you can forgive yourself for anything you've done that you hate. None of it defines you. I think you're awesome, and your kids, or future kids if you're not a parent yet, are super lucky to have you looking out for them. He did see that you were a child. That's why he was there. Tiger Baby 1.9K. 7 days ago, edited 6 days ago. As a kid I had a friend who babysat a 30 to 35-year-old guy's young kid when she was 12 to 13. He, the dad guy, started to romance her and convinced her they were dating, but people just wouldn't understand. I do remember asking her if she had had sex with him and what it was like. She said it didn't do anything for her, but I do it because he likes it. At the time I thought she was really mature and knew what she wanted in life, and parents would just try and boss her around. She moved after a couple years of being with him, so fizzled out. She is married with her own kids now, and we aren't friends anymore, but as an adult I wish I could go back and explain to us that she was being abused, that it was predatory, and get the guy put in prison. I don't know the guy's name to look up whether he ever got caught. Edit BC clarify and typo. This is the reason my parents would absolutely not allow me to work as a babysitter when I was a teenager. I always thought they were being overprotective, but who knows, I read too many stories like these now. I was 15 and definitely didn't understand a thing about love or danger. I found out that he was married and had a child because he literally disappeared, and I was trying to find out what happened. OMG, that's crazy. I am sorry you got preyed on like that. Pizza Roll 94 a PR. RLR's VO telephone re WAETOE. Pipe. Till put it my experience in here while I'm at it. Was 14. He was 21, and I thought it was cool that he had a car and could buy alcohol. Luckily I didn't interact with this person for more than a few. Lee T. Lane. It's fucked up how common this kind of thing actually is. I remember my best friend dated a 21-year-old guy when we were both 14. Back then I felt a little grossed out, but honestly I was mostly jealous. He was handsome-ish and gave her the attention she craved, but eventually she figured out that he was only using her for sex. Then he left her for a 13-year-old. It only dawned on me years later just how fucked up all of this actually was. He was a straight-up pedophile, and we all thought he was so cool. The thing that terrifies me about internet predators is just how damn fast they can move. A friend of my sister has a 12-year-old who recently got raped by a man she'd spoken to online for 2 days. It went from chatting with someone on a forum for a show she liked, to giving him her address and the time she'd be home alone bored. Within 48 hours. Of course she thought he was a local who was only 15, so she didn't know what danger she was in, until a 30-year-old showed up at the door and forced himself on her. I was 15 with a 21-year-old. He hung around youth group and made all us younger girls feel special with his attention. I was shy and quiet, didn't stand out much, but obviously wanted the special attention that all the prettier, peppier girls got. He wasn't interested until he found out my mom worked nights and I was home alone. We ended up getting into a pretty heated argument and split. When, 2 weeks in, I still hadn't let him come over because I was terrified of what my mom would do if she knew I'd had anyone over while she was gone. Glad you stood up to him, but kudos to your mom for raising you right. Made all us younger girls feel special with his attention. Male attention is a fucking superpower for girls that age. It's terrible that a similar age gap when I was 15. We dated from when I was 15 to 18. Then he broke up with me as soon as I was an adult. Later on he said we couldn't be in any contact because he was afraid I would try to manipulate him. I had no idea what I could possibly be manipulating for. I'm 24 now, and I realized earlier this year that he didn't want me to realize and accuse him of the pedophilia he'd been committing for the last 3 years, complete with child porn. I was 11 and he was 23. We didn't date. He had a girlfriend, but he would sext me and send me nudes. Eventually I realized it was strange and blocked him. Didn't tell anyone about it. I sometimes wonder if it's impacted me more than I would care to tell a depressed gay dumbass. 3.2K.7 days ago, edited 6 days ago. IHAD a similar thing. He was 19 and I was 11, and he would always ask me for nudes, but I never sent them cause knew it was wrong deep down. I finally got the courage to tell my friends a little while ago. Also, happy cake day. Edit. Thank you all so much for the upvotes and the kindness. I really hope everyone who has been through a similar situation is doing good. Sierra. Operashik 209.42.5K.7 days ago at top comment the 3rd of June 2020 award EY. My mother found older boys to introduce me to when I was 15/16. She would take me to coffee shops or sneak me into bars and charm her way with men in their 20s only to introduce them to me. I would date them, and she would get chores done around the house that she needed. Painted kitchen, fixed cabinets, roof work, stuff like that. I remember my best friend's mom trying to warn me and explain to me why it was wrong of my mother to let her 15-year-old date 25-year-olds. But I just thought I was really cool. It wasn't until one of them found me online and reached out a few years ago that I realized what she'd actually been doing all that time. And of course, none of these guys knew what the fuck they were doing, so the house looked like shit anyways. That is so fucked up. Your mother was whoring you out for cheap labor? Tay, do you have a relationship with her today? Your situation was so fucked up. But I need to comment cause that last line made me laugh so. Now via ECT equals I5A. I just audibly let out it. Holy fuck. I'm so sorry you were used like that. I hope you're doing okay. My mother tried something similar, although I don't think she was trying to actually get me to date him but use him. We were moving and apparently he made comments about my picture, saying I was pretty. He was in his mid to late 20s and I was 16. They worked together. I think she told him if he helped us move he could meet me. I just said hi and left since that creeped me out. And he got stuck loading the entire U-Haul himself. I was 13 with a 22-year-old boyfriend. He made me feel special. Grown up. My friends were all jealous. TBH, he was hot. A predator but a solid 10 out of 10. We met on Xbox Live. Those were the days. And started a relationship. I was in my ugly duckling phase, so was drawn into it by the attention. No boys my own age seemed interested in me. I was bullied a bit, and it was nice for a good-looking older boy to think I was pretty. He slowly pressured me into sex. Started with pushing me into sexual acts on webcam, to oral, then full sex. He always insisted on filming everything because he loved me so much he wanted to only use our videos as porn. What I wasn't aware of was the fact he was showing all his friends in. They made bets on how quickly he could get me to do something else. Whenever I pushed back, he always said, if I wanted to date a man, I needed to act like a woman. Otherwise, he would find a girl more willing to have a proper relationship with him. He then tried to pressure me into sleeping with his friends. Started with a threesome, him included. Then one night he asked me to just sleep with his friend. I saw his friend give him money, which is when I realized this whole thing was a lie and left. Wow, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I hope you're doing well now. As a 21-yo with 13-yo sister, I feel disgusted by this. I mean, you were a child and he took advantage of your insecurities. May he rot in hell. You have to love 2.8k points 7 days ago. Edited 7 days ago FY. I relate to this so much. Sex is reversed. I was the younger guy and she was the older woman, pressuring me into sex. When she would go on an abusive tirade and I would get upset, she would tell me to stop getting emotional, saying I need to be a man, that she needs a man. Yet, she was in her early to mid-20s and I was 15 to 16 years old. At 31, I see it for what it was now. Then, I was a broken teenager who'd been horrifically abused in every way imaginable by almost all older people around me. My parents were my main abusers. A teenage boy, looking for love and acceptance. Also sexually driven. She saw that and took advantage of it. We met in a chat room. She lived in another state and she even tried to kidnap me to go live with her as a minor. She really is a sick fuck. On top of it all, she always wanted to have unprotected sex so I could give her a baby. One of the most heartbreaking things was hearing her supposedly cheat on me while on the phone. She did cheat on me and get pregnant by some guy who left her. Then tried coming back to me 4 years later. Yeah, she's left me alone. She needs to be in prison. Your story just triggered all that. Thanks for sharing. You did nothing wrong at 13. You did nothing wrong. Period. Hope you're better now and that you've moved past this. We're all insecure and wanting acceptance from our peers at that age. He took advantage of that for his predatory inclinations. Feel free to reach out if you ever need to talk. Finally, a therapist would be a good resource to get. They can help you process this. Fuck. My heart just broke reading this and I hope that you are in a better place. I have a 2-year-old daughter and it's stuff like this that I am most terrified of. One, no, she's got a while to go. But, is there any advice you would give to parents or other kids to prevent stuff like this? Which country was it? In my country, I remember I used to say I was 18 in chat when I was 15 because other 15-year-olds would not care for boys their age. Also, men would drive and pick up girls in school. It was very fucked up. I'm from a third world country as well. And in my country, dating is kind of a taboo and parents don't want their children dating anyone. But it happened to me too. I was 14. He was 18. Unfortunately, I was set up by my friend, who was also 14 at the time. It was her cousin. We went on 2 dates before my brother found out. He was also around 18 at the time and he tried to explain it to me why it's wrong and I should stop seeing him. I argued with him because I Didn't know it was wrong. We continued dating for 2 more months until my brother threatened to tell my parents. I stopped seeing them out of fear of my parents. I now know what my brother did was for my own good. And I don't blame my friend as well because she didn't know any better either. I am 19 now and have had another boyfriend my own age, and it makes me nauseous to think I'd date a 14-year-old. Apparently, my previous boyfriend had another cousin who dated a 12-year-old when he was 18 too. It's sad how they will live their lives without anyone ever knowing they're predators. He was my guidance counselor. I didn't realize how creepy he was until he proposed. The whole thing was fucked. The guidance counselor at our middle school had only girls, and a few most often. In his office, door shut, you could feel it was off. Even though I was naive and knew nothing about nothing. And this was confirmed when I asked one why she was in there alone a lot, and she looked absolutely panicked. As an adult, I heard he had been at the high school and they moved him because of some improprieties. Keep it creepy. 1980s. What guidance could this man possibly have given to anyone? Question mark. Fucking weirdo. Dude, that happened with mine too. They ended up getting married and have a kid. He's like 40 something and she's like 22 now or something. Yeah, the guy in my situation proposed too. After about 3 months of dating. It was part of him convincing me to sleep with him, which did end up working out. Thank goodness. Dude proposed. TF. Did you report him? He can never be allowed to be a fucking guidance counselor. How did that even start? No way could he have been forwarded about it and not lose his job. My first boyfriend, I was barely 15. He was 21. Worked in a local shop and all the girls at my school liked him, so came as a bit of a surprise when the biggest dork ever, me, somehow landed him and not any of the popular girls. We dated for maybe 4 months. Turned out he was sleeping with 3 girls in my year, which I found confusing because I begged him to take my virginity to no avail. Always found that really weird and insulting that he never even wanted to sleep with me. Plot twist. My mom had stormed into the shop when we first started dating and told him, "If you take my daughter's virginity, I will kill you with my bare hands." God bless my mom. Your mom knew you were dating someone that much older and was okay with it as long as he didn't have sex with you. That seems odd. Jerry 73 14.8K.7 days ago, edited 6 days ago. I was 14 and dated a 25-year-old cop. He never asked my age and I never told. One day we're chatting on phone and I told him that I got some homework to do and I'll call back later. He said, "Freshman year of college getting to ya, huh?" I said, "College? I'm in high school." Dead silence. Then he asked how old I was and I said 14. He freaked out and was saying I'm gonna go to jail for this. And I'm gonna lose my job. He said I can't see you again and please don't tell anyone. I said yeah, of course. I got why he was scared and I never saw him again and never told. When I was 16 I dated one of my older brother's friends. He was 26. He knew I was younger but not exactly how much younger. And we just never talked about age. Started our fling in the summertime, so when soccer practice began in the fall he was confused. As our local college doesn't have a team, he ghosted me and my dumb little heart was broken. But looking back I'm so glad he saw it as creepy and weird, and saved us both from more trouble. At least he owned up to it. This one is kinda better than all the rest. I'm sorry if it affected you at all, but at least he wasn't a true pedophile. I wanna say smart move by him, but obviously not so because he never asked age in first place. Bro, rip that cop. If I found out I was dating a minor who was half my age and I didn't know, I would have freaked out to a mow. This one reminds me of this time I dated a lawyer. I wasn't underage at the time. I was actually 23, but I've always had a baby face and he was still considerably older. We'd been chatting for a while, but during one date he took me somewhere that definitely required ID before the person checking could even ask. My date prompted me to give my ID to the guy. It seemed super pushy, and I was just awkward like, "Yeah, I'm 23. He looked a little relieved after that. Haha. We actually spoke about it later and laughed it off. I can't blame him really, because talk about a career ruiner. If I'd actually been underage, he probably could have approached it better. Though I met a dude on Adult Swim's forums back when I was around 12. He was 24 and was nice to me. Things always seemed hinky to me even from the beginning. But I had no friends in real life and was definitely in an ugly duckling place. So I figured that if this is who is going to pay attention to me, so be it. He would tell me the things he wanted to do to me and eventually sent me a hideously low-res picture of his dick, and all I remember her is trying to laugh it off and said I thought he sent me a picture of a socket. Eventually, he started asking that if we met in person if he could tie me up and take nudes of me. He started talking about buying a plane ticket to visit me and for my address, and I guess I finally had a bad enough gut feeling and didn't go through with it. My family eventually found out about his talking and it was a huge deal. I was rightfully banned from the internet for a while. Not that it mattered much, because I wound up meeting another awful dude older than me. But this one was locally grown. Lol. Jesus Christ, this same exact thing happened to me. The way my parents found out was because he ordered me a fucking Hollister hoodie and mailed it to my house. I gave him my address. He was 33 and I was 12. How long do we have to wait for chapter 2? I was 15 and met a 30-year-old who was an older brother of a boy I met in group therapy. He used to tell me how complicated and mature I was. Lol, so cliche. I'm now 24 and seeing or interacting. TAE Tanner Nom CMPMTTL CMTTLOS Clio. Erect M out eat LEC Mealy WANLYA. LAR come. People that age your children. I feel the same way. I'm in shock whenever I see a 16-year-old because they're just so young. I'm 32 now, same age as the man that took advantage of me. And that's exactly what I think of when people try and spin that she loved it or she was mature. Precisely why we have a duty as men and women to not allow that to happen. Sort of scary to read this as a 15-year-old. I had this revelation a while ago and it blows my mind that a 34-year-old abused 16-year-old me. My husband was 34 when we met, and watching him interact with his best friend's 16-year-old daughter is night and day different to the way I was treated by this person, and it drove him the difference for me. Function used to tell me how complicated and mature I was. Is there like a predator handbook out there or something? Because this seems to be move number 1. From what I've heard from friends who were preyed on. I was in an awkward conversation telling my ex-friend he's an actual pedophile, talking to a girl who was a victim of trauma. He asked me to be in a Skype call to see how grown up she was. I felt sick. She was talking for 20 minutes about how someone in her chemistry class took her seat, and what drama ensued, while talking in a sex kitten voice the entire time. It wasn't her fault. She had a dad who left, and an obvious eating disorder, and probably an entire array of issues. But he was a pathetic man-child who felt like he wasn't good enough for anything. So, PCTNLA1 ATLA AMOL KMHMTT1A 001 REBOCR on. He texted that he was standing outside my middle school waiting for me. I broke out in a cold sweat and I knew I had made a massive mistake. Edit. Some comments have been asking for details. I hesitate, because it is shameful and I know in my heart it was wrong and part of it is not my story to tell. But maybe this can be a cautionary story for other young women. I was going down a bad path when I was 14. I looked up to a friend that lived by her own rules. She did whatever she wanted and didn't care about consequences. If I wanted to be in with her and her friends, I couldn't be a baby. I had to do grown-up things. One day, my friend came to me and casually told me she had slept with a 19-year-old. And over the course of our conversation it came out that he hadn't used a condom. I got her help. I had to lie to do it. But my friend was angry that the guy wouldn't answer her texts. I told her to give me his number, stupidly thinking I could appeal to him to apologize and do right by her. I was trying to get him to text her back and work things out. But the next thing I know, he's asking me for my picture. He wants to know if I'm really who I say I am. I should have stopped there, but I sent him the picture. Next thing I know, he starts saying how cute I am while my friend is reading his texts back to me at the same time. The whole thing is surreal. My friend looks like she's ready to blow the whole thing over, and she swears up and down she's not going to bother about the guy anymore. We let it drop. The guy keeps texting me for the next few days trying to wheedle me, and I get this awful idea in my head. If I want to stop being treated like a baby, I have to do what my friend does, right? She doesn't care about rules or boundaries, so why should I? And I did something terrible. I flirted back at him. Things started to escalate. He would ask for nude pictures. He sent me graphic videos. Then he started planning for us to meet and have sex, always in public places. I was scared and I knew I had gone too far. I tried to blow him off. I thought he would lose interest after that. But that was LTT Melwan alum Clemen Roorsa beer. A lot of things from those years fill me with shame. But this is the hardest to deal with because I know I didn't do right by my friend. No matter what our friendship was like, I should have told the truth and gotten her help, even if it got her in trouble. It took me a long time to realize we were both being preyed upon, and I'm not sure if my friend ever saw it that way. God, what did you do? Middle school? Question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. Jesus H. Christ, I hope he was caught by the cops eventually. You can't have been the first child he preyed on. How old was he? AIIIT equals 10A. Seriously, holy shit. I don't know why. I don't remember watching anything or being around anyone that would influence me to do this. But I used to, at the age of 12 to 14, send nude pictures of myself to older men. I would go on chat sites and offer up these pictures of myself. I never met up with any of the people I sent pictures to. And I still, to this day, don't know why I did it. To this day I think about older men taking advantage of me, and I don't know why I always go to that place. I don't think I was abused. If I was, I don't remember it. In the days of AL I was 12/13, but my ASL was 17F. My fake name was Ravina. I was so painfully obviously a young child, so I am positive that all the extremely explicit chats I had with Call UYCMAMs area KTRUAECNATVCNCLLC me CE. A 6. I was so horny and pervy. I printed the chat records to share with my neighbor friend so she could whack off to them, too. I remember being very aware of kidnappers, so I never had any intention to meet up with anyone or give any real identifying info, but that didn't help my parents feel any better when they found a chat record in the printer. You described the same exact thing I did when I was younger and exactly how I feel now. Kind of. Feel emotionally checked. Same here. I sent pictures to random man on Omegful. As a child I had rape fantasies. Because I didn't want to die as a virgin. I actually got taken advantage of by an older man for a couple of months over Snapchat, Skype. I was 13/14. He was around 22 and it destroyed me emotionally. But I guess I was already fucked before that whole thing XD. Same. It still fucks with me sometimes that I have child porn of myself lingering around somewhere on the internet. 57 Dimensions 35.6 days ago, edited 6 days ago. That a similar experience, although it was more of a one-time thing. When I was maybe 12 or 13, I stripped and masturbated live for a guy who I couldn't even see on chat roulette. It really scares me now that he probably screen recorded and that video of me is out there somewhere. But I really was just incredibly horny. And I can remember feeling basically high from how turned on I was from what I was doing. In a way it's good to hear that so many other girls did similar things. Because it's obviously fucked up, but at least I'm not that insane or alone. My wife said she used to do the same thing in Yahoo chat rooms and then on MSN. She'd go on cam and get her tits out to people she knew were older. I found this out when I was trying to show off by telling her when I was 17 I was going out with a 31-year-old lol. I had sex with a 28-year-old when I was 13 and thought it was perfectly normal. He always complimented me, bought me stuff, and drove me places when I needed a ride. Looking back now, I can't believe I didn't realize how fucked up that was. To this day he can't find someone to date that's his age. I'm 24 now, from what I heard from Enol S. There's a scumbag in our town that dates all the town's 16-year-olds. My husband got beaten up by him for protecting scumbag's girlfriend from him. She was a classmate of his. Douchebag broke my husband's rib and kicked him on the ground. Luckily he got a short jail sentence and a 3-year restraining order. My husband felt terrible when it happened because we'd just started dating long distance and he thought it sounded like a weird catfishing story. Guy is 35 now and still dating girls who don't know any better. Fuck you Chris, you asshole. Border_Hodges 17.9k.7 days ago, edited 7 days ago RCS. You didn't realize it was fucked up because you were a child and your brain wasn't developed enough, which is exactly why children can't consent to sex. When I clicked this thread, I was expecting it to be about 14-year-olds dating 18-year-olds. Your story is disgusting and I'm sorry it happened to you. I was 16. A school teacher of 30 used to touch me and text me stuff. I didn't really realize it was bad until some years later when he married a girl from my class. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared that people would think that it was my fault. That exact experience, except he had sex with me 2 days after I reached the age of consent in my state. I eventually got him fired. Mom reported him when I was suicidal, and everyone in the school turned against me because he was the most popular teachers. It was terrible. I'm sorry that you had to go through that and I hope it doesn't affect your life too much now. I'm sorry. It was never your fault. I hope you know that. You were a kid and he took advantage of his position of power over you. My school had a music teacher that married a student after she graduated. He was later found to be involved with a few other current students and was thankfully arrested. It's alarming how, at a molt a CMO limi 11 grams vera a leo. RAVENMADSAINTSFAN 2.2k.7 days ago, edited 6 days ago FY. It honestly never clicked for me until I was much older myself. I just thought I was super mature. And that's why it wasn't weird that I was 14 with a 19-year-old boyfriend. It was a super toxic relationship. He cheated on me, stole from me, lied to me and lied about me so much. He pretty much only came around when he wanted sex and would tell me whatever he thought I needed to hear to keep stringing me along. In my naivete, I thought this was just how grown-up relationships were, so I stayed until I finally got fed up at 18 years old. Isn't it funny that when I was finally old enough to date him, I no longer wanted to? I thought I was cooler than the other girls in my grade because my boyfriend was a man. Looking back. I'm sure I was an easy lay as I didn't require much from him in return like people his own age might have. And as I got older, I wondered if he ever felt odd having sex with someone who was so clearly a child. I also wondered how none of his friends, they all knew my real age, thought it was weird or called him out on it. I think that's the system they speak of when they say this kind of behavior takes a village of people who are not willing to protect the child. The irony of it all is that karma has blessed him with 3 daughters, and I'm sure he's had the scary thought more than once that another him will come along and treat his girls the way he treated me. Edit. To everyone saying 5 years isn't a big age difference. 5 years didn't matter when I was 18, and he was 23. But I was 14 when started dating, and when we started having sex. I was a freshman in high school and he was a sophomore in college. He could buy cigarettes and boatin', go to nightclubs or join the army. I was riding my bicycle to friends' houses because I wasn't even old enough for a learner's permit. To the people saying they have friends who are 19 and they are 14 or the like, I can't speak on your friendships, but I can tell you, he and I weren't friends. We were having a sexual relationship which, in also states, falls under the criminal code for statutory rape. Thank you for the award, kind stranger. Yeah, I dated someone who was 18 when I was 14 and it was a terrible relationship. I think when I was 15 and he was 19 we were at the public pool with friends. And I was sad, upset, because I had just found out he cheated on me. He was giving me a hug and trying to wheedle his way back in. A lifeguard who must have been about 19 or 20 and in his grade yelled at him to not touch me. And he tried to give this joking smile and shrugged her off. But she blew her whistle and was like, "No, Brad, I'm not kidding. She is too young. Don't touch her." And that was the only person who ever said anything. Frankly, I think expecting some kind of insight as a result of having daughters is unlikely. It's much easier to blame your kid for being a dumb slut than it is to reflect on your own pedophilic Lele. I was 17 and having a relationship with my 45-year-old teacher. Whilst I was in school, my dad was dying of terminal cancer and I needed someone to lean on. The police found out, but I didn't want to disclose any details. Watching my dad die was enough trauma, let alone having a full-on police investigation. He is no longer allowed to teach, but never was prosecuted. I tried to go for counseling, but they said they would have to inform the police of whatever I said. So I've been trying to deal with it by myself. He hit me and sent me death threats and I never reported him. How old are you now? Has the statute of limitations expired? If not, you can still report him. Therapist here. I'm in the USA and in my country confidentiality can only be broken if there is an active imminent threat to you or someone else. It sounds like the therapist you reached out to was inexperienced and not a good fit. I'm not sure how obtaining help works in the UK. You have universal healthcare, but I would recommend working with someone who specializes in sexual trauma, utilizing therapies such as EMDR, CBT, CPT and DBT as a complementary treatment after the trauma has been addressed. It saddens me to hear what you have experienced, and that when you did advocate for what you needed you were let down. Please try again. You are worth it. Your life is worth it. So, I posted this in a thread called Redditors that have called off their wedding. Why? I called off my wedding 3 months before it happened. Why? I was a 17-year-old. I'd have been 18 at the time of the wedding, about to marry a 26-year-old man that had been dating me for 3 years. I was a victim about to marry her abuser. The engagement ring, which I did eventually find out was fake. He has money, lots of it, but that didn't matter to me. Was to buy my consent, silence, whatever, as he stuck his dick in everything. That move. He was an alcoholic, a narcissist, A pedophile. Seriously. I wasn't a 14-year-old that looked like an 18-year-old. I was a 14-year-old that looked like a 12-year-old. I loved him because I thought he was saving me from my horrid situation with my family. My mom and I moved in with her boyfriend, only to find out too late that he was an abuser. He'd take me away from it, even if it was just for a little while. I was so messed up. I ended up living in a boarding house when things finally broke in my abusive household because, of course, I was 17 and he didn't want me to move in until I turned 18. His career depended on a squeaky clean image. I ended up pregnant, having a violent end to my pregnancy that resulted in my daughter's stillbirth. Despite this all, I loved him, but he started picking at my appearance. I was gaining too much weight, even though I was at a healthy weight for my age, height. I had gotten hips and breasts. So we talked about dieting. I stopped eating. I drank water when I'd get hungry. Everything had to be low fat, no fat, low calorie, no calorie, and sugar free. It worked. I went from healthy to underweight. What made me realize that I wanted out was a box of chicken wings. I ended up moving back in with my mother after she was able to escape her ex. We lived near an indoor flea market, farmer's market that had the most amazing food vendors. I love food, and this diet was killing me. I was fucking miserable. So, I decided to have a cheat day, and I went and ordered a box of hot wings from the chicken place in the farmer's market. As I sat down with my favorite movie, eating my favorite food, I realized that the extreme dieting would always be my life. Also realized that he wanting me to be so unhealthy wasn't right. I was tired all the time, cold all the time, hungry all the time. I decided, while happily munching on that box of wings, I was done. I called him, told him that I was done. It took me another 3 years to truly be done, but the very expensive wedding was done and over. He never got any deposits back. It took me almost a decade to realize that he wanted me to look like a 14-year-old forever. I was also always dismissive about the age difference, citing that I was mature for my age. I now realize it didn't matter. I was a child. I'm so sorry that happened to you, and so happy and proud you got out. Oof, for some reason this one hits hard. I'm so sorry for your horrible experiences. Thank God for chicken wings. Have you posted this story before? I remember reading it maybe 3 years ago. I'm so glad you got out of that situation. How are you doing now? Reading, he wanted me to look like a 14-year-old forever, honestly gave me chills. I'm glad you got out of it when you did. I realized I wanted to divorce my abusive ex while I was eating chicken wings too. Though my story was nowhere near the level of yours. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm glad you were able to break away from that on your own. You are so strong for that. Not a woman, but when I was under 18, I think I was 16. I joined a guild on WoW and the guild leader groomed and pressured me into sending him nudes and being naked on webcam. When his found out, she told the entire guild that I was a home wrecker. I really thought the guy cared about me, but he joined in and said I was desperate, and it was sad that I was so into him. He blocked me and ruined my reputation on that server. He was in the army in I think 28. Pretty sure those pictures got passed around, and it is absolutely vile that these 30-plus grown adult men were distributing child porn of me and laughing about it. I blamed myself for the longest time, but telling my story to horrified faces kinda made me realize how fucked up it was. This reminded me of my time on guilds during PKLO 3 times. I was 11 at the time, but said I just turned 13 to seem older. I was one of the only girls in almost every party I joined, so I made friends really easily. This one guy, 19 at the time, the guild leader, even changed the rules. That way I could join, so I felt really included and appreciated. But then we exchanged phone numbers, and it started getting personal. Long phone convos that turned to him asking me to be his girlfriend, and then sending and asking for pictures. I was just getting out of my ugly duckling phase, so I was super flattered. I sent pictures in my bra and he sent me back my first ever dick pic. We dated for a few months before I bragged about this to my cousin, and she talked sense into me when I showed her the messages, with him getting increasingly agitated that I wouldn't send full nudes. I ghosted him and eventually he gave up. I feel icky even remembering this NGL. The same thing happened to me. I joined a guild, and when the guild leader found out I was a 14-year-old girl, he came at me. He was in his 30s. I felt pressured to do a lot of things I really don't want to talk about, but are definitely inappropriate for a child to be doing. I look back at it now and the whole situation was fucked up. I'm sorry you had to experience that. I hope you are doing well. Glad you ended up talking about it and realizing that it wasn't your fault. It's funny how things like that always make you feel like you have done something wrong, even though you did nothing but reacted, and the other part is an actual perpetrator. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm a GL and feel responsible for my guild being a safe place for all guild members. Anyone pulling that kind of shit would be de-guilded so fast their virtual feet wouldn't hit the ground. Several have left after they've been told in no uncertain terms that sexist, racist, bigoted behavior or language will not be tolerated. Grooming an underage guild member would get them reported to Blizzard in the hopes of having their account suspended, banned. When I started WoW at about 141 was coming over from MapleStory. In MapleStory I was in RP guild and the guild leader hadn't a little brother already, so I made a girl avatar in RPED, the sister. I thought it was pretty fun to pretend to be a girl online, and I was damn good at it. You can usually tell who's not really a girl IRL with enough attention to detail in writing and wording. Anyways, I continued this on my second WoW character. The guild leader's second in command was a pedo all the way. Tried hard to get me to give in to his charm, so let that begin. The life of a catfish was a fun one for quite a while. They all never suspected, and before I moved over to my brother's server I outed him to the whole server. Felt good. SIUSE Terry MOE. Baby Stony 8.6K.7 days ago, edited 6 days ago. Echo AA3S. Ooh, this question was made for me, lol. I had this internet boyfriend. When dating, talking to people online was still taboo. For going on 2 years I believe. He lived in British Columbia and was, I believe, 31 at the time. While I was in California and I think 13 when I first started taking to him. I was going through a bunch of crappy things during that time at home. Dealing with constant fighting, domestic violence amongst my parents who tried getting back together. Dealing with self-esteem issues and self-harm. Contemplating suicide or running away. He was of course there for me to talk and listen, and always offered a place at his home if I ever decided to run away. Even offered to buy any plane tickets for me if I just said the word whenever I was ready. He would always talk about the life we could have if I did run away and such. I thankfully never did run away. But the summer I was entering into high school, the stars all seemed to align for me to finally meet him. I had always gone to summer camp with the YMCA in elementary and middle school, but high school-aged kids had a 2-week caravan instead. That year it just so happened that the caravan was planning on driving from Los Angeles to Vancouver, BC, and all the way back. I immediately told my mom I wanted to go and we got my spot reserved. He was definitely excited about finally meeting, and the plan was to hopefully have me sneak out of the campsite and spend time back at his place before bringing me back. We also discussed sex, and I agreed to lose my virginity to him when we met. I was worried about him getting in trouble. But it just so happened that the age of consent at the time in Canada was 14. So he assured me he would. At Bilaloe. The night came and I snuck out of my tent to meet him, and I forgot the reason why. But he didn't have his car for some reason. So the choice was to take a taxi back to his place or stay at the campsite. I was worried about getting caught off-site, so I figured we could just hang out somewhere away from everyone. We found a picnic bench and I thought we could sit and talk for a bit, but he was just trying to get right to work. He was suggesting to have me lose my virginity on top of this picnic bench out in the open. And there was some random person's tent, maybe 20 or so feet away. All they had to do was open their tent and they would be facing us and see everything. He was adamant about us doing it there because there was no other option, and my dumb self gave in to the pressure. So I lost my virginity at 14. In another country. Outside on a picnic bench too. This loser of a 32-year-old. It was pretty terrible since it hurt. Wasn't the most pleasant environment. And he lasted maybe a minute. I had instant regret, but at least no one came out of that tent or walked by while it happened. Edit. Well, thank you for the gold, you awesome humans. My first award too. And thank you to everyone who has left such kind and insightful comments. I really didn't expect this story to be seen, let alone touch so many of you. You guys are amazing. Dude, I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope you're doing okay now, and I hope you know that the abuse you experienced doesn't define you. Man, this one hit me. I am in my early 30s and a high school teacher, so I spend a lot of time with teenagers. I love my kids, but I can't imagine wanting to have sex with any of them. Especially then freshmen. They're such babies. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That is so creepy. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Did you ever hear from him again?